I am joined. Soon, come with yours. Would you like me to click your graphics? Sure. On the screen. We sent Erica. Right, thank you. Y'all get what I emailed. Say that again, do y'all get what I emailed? Just I did not get anything.
Last I got was actually. Responsibilities, 10 towns. To
Oh, it's in my outbox.
I didn't get it either. We'll just work with theirs.
Yeah, we'll work with yours and then I'll fix that here in a minute. Good morning, everyone. Is that something you need to do?
It happened last time as well.
To make it a little bit bigger.
So I think we're narrowing it down to 2 areas that we just wanted to discuss. We had wanted to limit any new issues after we had kind of had more proposals on the table, just to make sure that that wouldn't unravel other things we kind of shared before about how, you know, initially we wouldn't think crossovers would be relevant, but then in hearing a little bit of conversation, we recognized that that probably would. And so we just put
Do you want me to go to?
yeah, go to the second change. Sorry, I wasn't sure which one's first. February 21st, because that gives us today and next week, so that will be done by the 21st. Depending on what all y'all have available, we kind of gave some room for to get everything on the table. And then as far as the bargaining team, you know, we had composed the team well before, and so we just said 6 members that are empowered to make decisions for their constituents at the negotiation table, but that the city recognizes the full bargaining team that consists of 12 members for the purposes of ABM. Just to, you know, we just want to make sure that that's really what we're primarily concerned with.
Go back to the other change. I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing here.
Sure.
Because I had the same conversation with the police when we did their ground rules. What we're talking about are the topics, not the actual language to be placed on the table. So that's why we were looking at another date. We didn't want you to think that we expect you need your articles drafted and on the table by next date. So just wanted to be clear what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about, that's why I brought up the crossover section, not that language specifically, but just in conversation with y'all, we realized that that crossover section should probably be included. So I think getting to see a little bit of each other's language will just make sure that we have all of the topics covered by then. But I understand, yeah.
We have a response already, because we did have a chance to look at these, but we wanted you to share this publicly. But give Roxanne just a minute to.
The email has been sent,
Yeah, okay, I got it.
and so I think it's in there, but I'm gonna present it, but if you wanna pull it up so that you can. So we have the city's response ready to those two issues. Those were the only two remaining issues on the ground rules. And I think we're really close, if not at that meeting, you know, getting some ground rules established so we can move forward. Everything is good on number one. We've accepted that. I think the only addition, we recognize number four, and that the association has voted on its bargaining team, et cetera, for purposes of efficiency and making sure that our sessions are fruitful, that we have the six, and we really appreciate you understanding that and taking that into consideration. The only proposed addition we have is that the association business leave is pursuant to the term of the current agreement, just so everybody is clear as to how it's been working and how it's going to continue to work. And that doesn't really substantively change anything. And then on the process, on number one, we had previously discussed maybe using the third, that we would be more than okay with the third bargaining session. And I think with the clarification that Sarah made is not so much that we need, you know, these specific, you know, all your proposals, I think just identifying it to just we did on our highlighted agreement, that these are the items that we think are going to be impacted and that are gonna be subject to the negotiation. And of course, we still have the language that allows, except for agreement by party, because if we know if there's gonna be an impact, that's what we're all on the same page, that if there's a direct impact on something, that is something that's gonna be subject of the reopener. So we just changed it to the 16th to try and move forward. We do have anticipate, once we get the ground rules, that we'll work on Article 2 today, and I believe that we're already prepared to present some other of the easier proposals today and try and get that out of the way so we can get into the bigger stuff.
Well, and I think additionally, just so you know, we intend on having a broader conversation today on what we think, you know, what do we think we're talking about to make sure we're on the same page, or if there's any big red flags we're flagging. So we anticipate that today.
I think that, you know, I obviously have to talk to my team. I think we would be comfortable with that date. But the one thing that would be really helpful is to know if y'all would be ready to present on which positions that the city is currently thinking about putting into the bargaining team. And so if y'all are ready for that today, then I think we'd be very comfortable with that date. And so y'all tell me if that's something that can be on that we can have a discussion about today.
I don't quite understand that question. What articles we're ready to present today?
Know about which personnel y'all envision coming into the bargaining
Oh, personnel.
or positions.
The positions coming in emerging in. If we're ready today.
Okay. Then I'll talk to my team and you know, and then if y'all want to move on to shoot now or take a break, it's up to y'all. Okay.
And I just want to clarify on these ground rules. These ground rules are in no way meant to impede the negotiations of the reopener article at all. It's in fact to help us facilitate a fruitful discussion and come to the goal quicker and at the end. So there is a provision in here that allows if something out of the blue comes out that we discuss, that we can add this or change something in the ground rule upon agreement. So I just want to point that out. Okay.
And have y'all talked about leads at all?
About the what?
Leads,
What needs?
bargaining leads.
Oh,
That's-
that's
that's
correct.
correct.
I apologize. There was one other thing that we were proposing was that in the ground rules, and I'll add that in there. I appreciate that. I had actually inadvertently left it out of this proposal, but at some point, we just wanted to designate, add in there something that who the bargaining leads were, that the leads on each team would be the lead negotiator and the attorney. Just to facilitate the process and make sure that when questions are being asked or answered, that we have the ability on each side to make sure we have the correct data and information we need to properly answer the question. Because I'd rather that we do our homework, answer the question correctly than have, because this is a limited time that we're dealing with this. So we do propose, and I'll send that over, just identifying that the lead negotiators are gonna be the lead negotiator, Selena, and Attorney Houston, same over here, Sarah and Roxy. And that the discussion would be facilitated for each team through the lead negotiator and the attorney.
So how would that, if we wanted somebody else to present or talk about?
You just formally recognize them to present as opposed to, you guys don't tend to do it, and I think Roxy said, and I think you talked to Houston about this. I didn't even realize that wasn't in here, because every time I've ever negotiated prior to Austin, it's just in there. I mean, it's these are the people who talk. If I want Chief Gardner to explain something, then I turn to Chief Gardner and have her explain it. If it's a budget question that Ryan Dorr needs to talk about the pay scale chart, then we have him present it. And that's kind of like how we have the resource people on the team, is they have specific like expertise or know the answer to whatever. You just recognize them as a lead negotiator. It's not that nobody else can talk. It's just kind of a formalized.
You get placards.
If you want placards, you can do that. You'll cuss words, but
One of the other things also is that we want to be, we kind of know where the issues that we're gonna be seeing, and we're trying to anticipate the flow so that we have our people available and your people available and the information available. So we encourage that, because if we need to get Brian in here, we have to have a little bit of lead time to get him in here and away from what he currently is doing, so.
And so if we have a specific HR question, is our side allowed to direct a question to Rebecca, or is that?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but we're gonna get you the answer by letting Rebecca answer it, or by saying, we didn't have issues, answer that. Rebecca's guessing, and we don't want people guessing answers, or trying to do their best to try to help you if it's not precise. So, and that's why she's saying it ahead of time, we can have the right person here to answer the question.
Yeah, and even offline, before we meet there, if you anticipate something, don't hesitate to reach out to us so that we can try and facilitate having that information already, so that we can discuss it.
We will take a look at that language, just to see what it looks like. And do you all want to caucus or start looking at?
No, I think we can, and I anticipate that being really simple language, nothing crazy. And I think we can move on to, or do you want to do that caucus on this and do the ground rules so that we can move on and we want them to present Article 2?
Yeah, we still haven't finished going through your Article 2, so if you want to present Article 2, and then we can caucus and actually come up with our response for it. Because I don't think it was going to be too substantially different, but we had just gotten our act together, basically.
Luckily, our team gave me a cough drop. Days. Hope you did maybe there. So one, we appreciate y'all's revised definition of staff. I think that it was much further than what we had seen previously. So I really appreciate the work that y'all done on that. Roxy, thank you for taking the time to really work with me. Help me understand fully the intent behind what the city's proposal was. I think we share that intent of it being a more inclusive term than exclusive term. And so we borrowed some language from y'all's proposal in our proposal. So if you'll see under 14, under uniform staff, we had discussed the active phrase of who provide emergency medical services and discussed kind of that in our view could be limiting later when people outside of this room try to interpret this contract. And so we borrowed some language to also make that a little more position specific and put whose position requires or contemplates the provision of emergency medical services, because we think that that will make sure that we include folks that may be assigned academy comms. It really has a more breadth of who our members are currently and possibly what folks coming in. And so that is the reasoning behind adopting that same language for emergency pre-hospital care. We wanted to, we like that language, so we borrowed it. And then at the end, we just wanted to clarify, just like assistant chiefs under civil service as well as under the contract are excluded from the uniformed staff, however, they would be, they maintain their protections under 3. We wanted to include medical directors if, assuming that those are positions that would be directly under the chief medical officer. Those are our changes.
Under the head of the department.
Or sorry, under the head of the department.
Who do you envision, what kind of positions do you, because medical directors can be a broad term, I guess, and more limited positions, we don't, what do you envision medical directors encompassing?
We have our lead medical director, I don't know what the term is now. Chief medical officer, and then he has, in this case, Dr. Escott has 3 other medical directors. So, I mean, MD really.
Okay.
Those are our changes.
Those are all director level positions.
So, I will work on sending you over the, just the designation of the lead negotiator and the attorney. And then, we'll caucus on this and we'll work on our response. So, I guess we can take kind of a caucus/lunch break, and I don't know how long do you anticipate?
Once we have this response or in conjunction, we're gonna wait till we finalize this for the rest of our presentation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, I think that we do it,
Simultaneously.
yeah. Because we're also just gonna kind of present from the city's
Oh,
perspective.
yeah, we're gonna, let's finish this first.
Right. We just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, so, especially with the uniform staff, the definition.
Yeah, let's finish this and then we have a broader presentation after that.
Yeah.
Okay, so time wise, it's 11:30. Draft that language, send it to them, lunch, come back at 12:30? Or do you guys leave?
Yeah.
Do you need to leave?
12:30 is great.
Okay, let's do 12:30. Okay. All right, let's do 12:30.
Oops.
Good afternoon. We've all been working really hard on our each respective, with each of our respective teams in caucus. And what we have done is we've reviewed the proposals to the revisions to the ground rules. And I think that we have just some slight revisions to the proposal, which I think clarify the issues. I think everything's good on that one. This, on number 4, we're good with the language on the 6 members, and the city recognizes that the full association team consists of 12 members. Just so there's no question on the association business leave, as to how that process works, we just added the reference to pursuant to the terms of the aforementioned agreement, which is the current agreement right now, and that has all the ADL terms. And then this is the sentence that I added with regard to just the facilitation of the process and how these meetings and sessions will go. The discussions at the table will be conducted and facilitated by and through the designated lead negotiator and the attorney for each team. And that allows, that is to say, if you want to call somebody, that you can announce it and you can determine, on your presentation, who you're going to call and how you're going to present that. Are there any questions on that? Okay. On the new issues, we have moved it to February 16th again, which is the 3rd session, with the, of course, exception that if there's an agreement by the parties or something comes up, that we can agree to 2 additional items that are subject to the reopener, the impact bargaining. I believe that's all we had on the ground rules, and I have emailed those to your side, so that you should review and consider that. So it's not anything substantive. I think it was just clarification, and that you would read the revisions.
We don't have questions. No, I think we're good to TA.
Okay, we're gonna TA it. Okay.
We were unable to,
I had some major formatting issues when I tried to accept all the changes to prepare a TA. It made some crazy sections. So what we did, I'm gonna have to retype them. So what we did was we just printed out what I emailed you, so we can just sign them and work off of them. We'll have a copy for signature at the next session. Okay. Yeah, I can do it. I'm gonna come over and then over to your side. Here we go.
that's just one original for each. I'll sign out, and I'll start time out Article 2. I'm sorry, what do you want to start time out Article 2?
Oh, yeah, but if we can just sign the TA, and then we'll do the clean copy, and then we'll go into Article 2.
And so is it our version of Article 2 or yours? It's,
We had.
It's,
I know we've done a couple.
no, it's our response.
Okay.
It's our response. The union,
I don't think we ever presented it.
the last,
Did they keep their own?
no,
We gave our,
Oh, we did, yes, we presented.
right, you presented, and then, we're responding, so I'm gonna work off of what was presented this morning, so that's what I'm going to do. I know, it was,
Let someone knows.
just trying to keep it straight.
And for the future, we're not gonna do track changes, right? We're gonna do what we used to do.
That's correct, and I was trying to do that with, working with what we'd already started, because I had inadvertently done the review, because that's how I do a lot of my other documents, but from now on, we're gonna do the track changes like we did on the last contract, where I think yours is red, mine's or ours is blue, and any agreed
It's green.
and footnotes, just to indicate the work. As long as we know, it's a way to keep us organized and keep us on track of what has been exchanged. Okay, on Article 2 definitions. 14, the definition of uniform staff. First, when I read this, I inadvertently took out "or" and added "and." And when I re-looked at the statutes, it was correct the first time. And because the employees who are included, the original definition in the current contract, the employees who are included are employees who are appointed in substantial compliance with Chapter 143, which is the promotional or appointments and hirings, or who are entitled to civil service status under Chapter 143.005. That statute basically says that if you were in a position that became a sworn position when civil service was adopted, that you're automatically considered in that. So that's already happened. So it would be appointed or when the chapter was adopted, which has already been adopted. And both of those would be positions that require and contemplate the provision of emergency medical services. So legally, we have fixed it so that it says what we need it to say. And we agree with your proposed language on whose position requires or contemplates the provision of emergency medical services. And I visited with Houston and explained why it needed to go through and went through the statutes. And so we've done that. The second part is, we understand, you were talking about including the exclusion of medical directors, which you also identified as the physicians. One of the things that we did was go ahead and move it from this sentence, which talks about the head of the department and the persons appointed under that, which would be sworn classifications, and moved it over to the part where it explains what the term excludes. And the term excludes, we put it in with that one because it would apply to civilian employees. The chief medical director and the physicians would fall under civilian employees and not fall under sworn positions. And so that would be excluded from the bargaining team and from the definition of uniformed staff. So we moved it to that second sentence, but we agree with the concept that you have provided. We just think it's clearer with the proposal that we made. And then on the last one, when we looked at on section A, the term applies only to these employees. When we're looking at the statutes that are referenced and the legal, looking at what it says, chapter 773-00310 identifies the positions that are included in that. And then it further defines those individual positions through those other statutes that are noted from section 773.046 to 773-0495. So we think a clearer way to say that is that it's first defined in the 773.00310 in the definitions, and then it goes on to further define each of those positions later on in the cited statutes. So we just think that's a clearer way to understand that all those definitions are going to be looked at together and that they're further defined. I think those are all the proposed changes that we have to Article 2, number 14.
Do they have that one?
Yes.
So I wanted to have a conversation about the medical director thing. We do want them to be sworn in the sense that, but we're not saying that they should be in the bargaining unit. We think that they're executives. I think our idea was that, and I think that civil service law is a little confusing in this way, but when we merge Akamo into the department, we want it to be a cohesive organization. They go out, they run calls, we want them to wear our badges. And so to us, that's what we're talking about being sworn. But my understanding is that, you know, Chief Gardner has has civil service protection because she came up through the ranks. So, you know, you could be demoted to division chief. But Chief Lukritz wouldn't be demoted anywhere because he never promoted. And so he has different level of civil service protection, although he does. So I think we are just thinking about how do we be a cohesive department and have our medical directors be sworn, because the other thing is in many other places, including places that do have civil service, the medical director is also the chief. And so there is a world in which that could happen. And so we wouldn't want to exclude them from being sworn in that event. I think the more that we really think about it, especially seeing your language, the more complicated we recognize that this issue is. And so I think our preference is to go back to the original language, which is just not mentioning the medical directors at all. But we do, so unless y'all have a much clearer idea of who is allowed to wear a badge or not, and how we can integrate that, because we would just like to be seen as a unified department.
I think in looking at this, I understand there's a lot of complicated, issues that the transition like this is gonna present. What we were focusing on was the legal aspect of what, number one, the statute provides, and then what we had in the current contract, which is derived from the statute. And for instance, a medical, the chief medical director or the chief medical officer, whatever you call it, is statutory in nature and is not an appointment that's under 143. So that's what we're looking at is we want to maintain, make sure that we follow what the statute is with regard to what the chief medical director and the chief medical officer, how they serve and how they fulfill their statutory duties. And there's, and so we're looking at 143, we're looking at what 143 defined as the bargaining unit, the uniform staff. And the reason that we did this, but we're working on this because this is the core of who are we dealing with here? Who is going to be in the bargaining unit? Who is going to be subject to the contract? So when we're looking at it, we understand all those other issues, but when we're looking at it, it's based on the legal definition what 143 provides us and what has already been agreed to in the contract. And we just wanted to make sure that in the transition, that the sworn positions that are coming in from Akamo, as determined by the chief, are included in the definition.
We'll obviously provide a response, but it very likely just the interim medical director. Okay, just so you know.
When you say that, do you mean move it back to where Houston had it or remove it completely?
It was never in there in the first place, so we meant to move it.
Okay, and you would do that with the understanding that they are or are not civilian employees? By just leaving it out, what is then your interpretation?
I think that, I guess to me, we still have a lot of questions about what that means. And so, as always, I think we just need to have more conversations about that. And I assume that Chief is going to have those conversations as well.
I think part of that question on that for us is also where will they be in the structure, the organizational structure? Because if head department classification is below the head of department, they're not part of the bargaining unit. So I think those kinds of questions of where that organizational structure, how that's gonna look, who serves, which master on that one, like, that really helps us understand the vision that what the city has and how we can kind of structure that, for.
I think we're mostly saying, we hope that there's some kind of way that the department is able to comply with civil service law with 7783, and have us look more uniform together. And I mean that like literal uniforms, not uniform style. And we're not weighing in one way or another.
Okay, so,
My computer just died, by the way.
yeah, we don't have it up on the screen anymore. The intent of the structure of the department, as determined by the chief, is to have those civilian employees. And for all of those, the medical decisions, the standards of care, all of that, they will not be reporting to the chief. So they are civilian. I mean, they just are, they're not sworn. And that's how the structure of the department is going to be defined under the management rights by the chief. We want to finish the statutory definition because that is, although in the bargaining contract, it is all derived from the statute. The problems we found last spring were from a misinterpretation of how that was written. So we were fixing those. So we do not intend to show you the organizational chart and have input on that prior to a statutory definition being agreed upon. That's kind of the whole point of being here, is we want to get the definition and then come take a look and make sure we agree that everybody fits in the right place. From the legislative language to how it's then structured. So we don't want to do it in reverse.
And
We
we're
want to
not-
make sure that the chief is totally in charge of that particular issue.
We're definitely not anticipating seeing the organizational structure and then adding in medical director wherever we feel fit at that time.
Yeah, we just wanted to make it clear he's not reporting to the chief for those sorts of things. So we believe, I mean, wholeheartedly believe that definitionally that's a civilian, that's not a sworn person.
And my understanding is that there are some semantics about, can you wear a badge and still, like, the medical directors do currently wear badges. And so is it possible to move into our department and still wear a badge?
Okay, so let me try to put this in a different way. Yeah, I would kind of prefer not to talk about it, to be honest. Yeah, well, definitely, that is my other way. That's gonna be 100% up to the chief. The organizational structure, the functionality, the operational, whether or not somebody wears a badge is 100% up to the chief. And so, yes, I would like to leave it at that.
And so here, just a question, so y'all's first proposal, no mention of medical director, physicians. We introduced that language with our intention of seeing kind of like the sworn status of us, assistant chiefs, that kind of thing, and just really kind of saying who's bargaining unit, who's not bargaining unit based on uniform staff. Would y'all be amenable to kind of going back to what y'all's first proposal is, get that who with the contemplation language?
So we had talked about that, yeah.
Are open to the chief.
Yeah, and we had talked about that internally. And now that it has been bargained for at the table, and the fact that you are not agreeing to the fact that there are civilians publicly, we can't do that. So no, is basically the answer. So,
All right.
Yeah.
Like me, I have to add.
I know you.
Okay.
I guess, so do you think that I would be comfortable even saying that they're civilian, but I just want to know that they could wear a badge.
I think ultimately the uniform staff is establishing the legal definition by which we're gonna work with on who does the union and the association represent? Who is part of the bargaining unit? I don't think that 143, or I haven't seen anything that says who can wear a badge and who can't. I think that's gonna be a matter of policy considerations to the chief. So I think that's something that we can work on that can be worked on internally. and those issues can be addressed. But what we're just focused on right now is just the legal definition, so it doesn't preclude. I don't believe that it precludes, that discussion and some resolutions. And I don't know anything about the badges, so I don't.
Neither do I. I don't know who wears the badge or who doesn't.
Yeah.
I think there's just an idea that when you are sworn, that means you carry a badge, and then there, I know that that might not be a precise way to couple those things together, and that they should be decoupled, but that's what I'm trying to clarify, is all I'm trying to say.
Okay, why don't you give us a couple of minutes to caucus and chat with Chief about that and see kind of where we fall on whether that's a hard stance or not. I don't wanna say, we're not,
Well,
you know, I just,
And I think for us, like, more of our intent was like, when we added that medical director into that language, that was saying they're not part of our uniform staff. they're not
yeah,
part of our
no,
work.
understand.
So we just wanted to make sure that we were adding that clarification. But now that,
Yeah, why don't you just give us a couple of minutes and let us chat with the chief and see where we come out on that, if we're at a hard stance or not. Theoretically, I think we're on the same page and we're in semantics now, but because that's statutorily derived, there's some points where we get stuck. So let's just chat for a few minutes in our caucus and I've got 3:58. I think by 4:15 we can be back. Yeah, we won't take long.
And I can get my.
You're fine, yeah. So, per our ground rules, I would like to keep this time to facilitate Chief Gardner speaking. Would that be the correct way to state that? And she did have a chance to talk to the chief and confirm what we want, so I'll let her explain.
So speaking on behalf of the chief, we agree with the concept of having a more unified and consistent department as we integrate these two departments. So he is committed to having uniforms that are consistent with the rest of the staff of Boston Trucks County. You know, that's having badges available for them that are consistent with Boston Trucks County. There are things that are already in place that are working towards rebranding of vehicles, some of the other marketing and type things, so he is absolutely committed to.
Yeah, and then, in terms of envisioning where the medical director are, the positions and four positions, those again are, envisioned to be civilian. They're not subject to 143. They're not gonna be in the rank structure, so to say. They're not gonna be, comparable to, say, a captain or a division chief, et cetera. And these are the civilian and non-civilian positions. So, you know, we don't envision them being, subject to like the disciplinary procedures, all of that other, stuff that would fall under 143. And what we're doing is that uniform staff is defining against that, you know, based on the statute, who are we dealing with in the bargaining unit? Who does this contract apply to? Who's gonna be, what are the impacts on these people, the contract, and what we're here about? So with that, I think that, with that explanation and with the understanding on the basis for why we proposed what we proposed, including the medical director and the physicians, was that they're contemplated at this point to be civilian. And so we stand on the proposed language.
I think, if that's all the case, then I think if you just, since it is already in here, the term additionally excludes civilian employees, retirees, and other employees, then to us, it is redundant.
I think, we don't want there to be confusion as to where, those physicians and the medical director or officer, and the physicians are going to be. I know that we had discussions about it, and there may have been some confusion. So I think some clarity is not redundant, but saying that this is gonna be the structure of how OCMO is transitioning, the OCMO positions are being transitioned into the EMS department.
Well, we will take a look, but I think that, otherwise, I mean, outside of, I think we all generally agree with the concepts. And so we'll respond, but we'd love to still make other progress if possible.
And I think that's kind of one thing that really puts up the roadblock is when we're doing this, nobody's putting their cards on the table. We don't know what the structure is gonna be. This is a hastily, this merger was done in haste, and we're trying to figure these things out on the fly, and it's really difficult for us to understand the intent, the vision of the department. And I mean, y'all's original version didn't even bring this up. And so, and whatever vision y'all had at that point, this was not something that y'all had even thought about to include, or at least to our knowledge, that y'all had not thought about to include to it. So it gets difficult for us to be able to define terms that we don't know the structure of what's happening. But we need to define this right now. So that just creates a difficulty for us to conceptualize what the department is planning to do with their structure of bringing in OCMO as far as positions. I think we're obviously we'll probably get a lot more, but we don't know what we're talking about. So if we could just have a little bit more of that transparency of what the intents are, things that will affect this. We're not trying to hide the ball, and I know y'all aren't trying to hide the ball from us, and so it just makes it harder when we're siloing information for those purposes, because they're all gonna come to play. And if we don't have all the information, then it's just tough for us to really see where this is going and whether or not this is a good idea. Other than that, we got ground rules.
So, with the proposed language that we've discussed, I think we're all agreeing on the concept that the physicians and the medical director, those four positions, are not gonna be part of the bargaining unit. And it solidifies that the structure of the organization as this transition is happening is being set by the chief pursuant to his inherent management rights and the management rights that are within the contract. So we understand, I understand that. I think that you do have the information based on our proposal and the discussions that we've had, that those for sure, those four positions are gonna be civilian, or they're gonna be civilian positions, not subject to 143. And I think once we tie this definition up, then we can go into our presentation with regard to what we envision, on what the reopener is gonna touch, what the impacts are gonna be. We've already outlined the highlighted areas in the contract for you that we believe are impacted by the transition. I think that's telling that there are gonna be, most of those are gonna be sworn positions. And I think with that, and we're mostly in agreement with that. I think that you'll have a couple of additional ones that we hadn't thought about and are considering, and then a couple that we may not yet agree on, but we'll see how it progresses. So I think with that, and these discussions are good because that's the information that we're sharing, and if you want to be forthcoming, we want to let you know that there has been a lot of thought put into this. As you've said before, this is not an easy, just drop in, where you just drop it in and let it go. There are a lot of impacts that we're going to be bargaining on here today. There's a lot of things that are outside the contract that will be looked at in this transition to make this be a cohesive and unified department. I think that the overall goal and the big opportunity that we have here is that we really have a very unique and situation where we're all working towards the same goal in enhancing the services that EMS is providing, and that's what we're working towards. That's our goal. That's what we're working towards. We understand it, and we hope that that is where all of this is coming from, because we know that the uniform staff definition needed to be addressed first before you move into anything else. And we're hoping that we can solidify that. And I think that we all are on the same page. If you can consider that, what we have proposed, talk about it. If you want to talk a little bit more, we're fine to answer questions or get whatever information you need on that with regard to uniform staff. And then from there, we will move towards our presentation. And I think we'll be able to outline even the positions as they're going to be either sworn or civil.
Are you ready to do the presentation, or?
I think
I think what Roxy is trying to say is we're really trying to get our definition of uniform staff done. It is the basis for the entire negotiations, who you represent and who you don't represent. We did not have those in the original definition because we thought it was obvious that they were civilians, definitionally civilians, not just bargained out of the unit, but civilians by definition, just they are. They always have been. We don't intend that to be changed. We don't intend to move them to sworn at all. However, when that language was inserted and we started discussing it at the table, and as I tried to explain earlier, maybe a bit inarticulately, once it's on the table as a bargaining item, when you go back to look at bargaining history, if there's ever an issue, that's when it becomes problematic. And at that point, I asked your lead negotiator, well, will you verbalize that you consider them civilians? And she said no. At that point, we may have gone back and been able to say, well, as long as they'll, say, yes, we agree they're civilians, they're not sworn, then we probably could have thought about not having it in the definition. But you've kind of backed us into a corner, where now we feel like it has to be addressed specifically. It's not that we never thought about it. We didn't think it needed to be addressed until you put it on the table, and then we realized, well, we better make this crystal clear. We need to make this clear, and we, right now, believe we need to make this crystal clear in writing. And that's why we want you to take a look at the definition again. We truly think we're on the same page, and this should not be a big deal. In all of this, we believe this whole bargaining structure, we're gonna agree on 99.9% of everything. And we think we agree here, we really do, but we do believe that it needs to be written into the article at this point because of the bargaining history.
I think what we are, so y'all might have a very specific legal definition that you're thinking of. I think for us, when we think of civilian, it is a loaded term. We think about civilian staff versus not. And so I'm being honest, it's an emotional term for us as well. And I'm not saying, but I agree that we 100% agree on who is in the bargaining, and it is not the doctors. And we also agree that the bargaining unit doesn't have a say over sworn. But I just am pointing out, the reason why I hesitate to put medical director where y'all have it is because we have had instances where medical directors were sworn, like Dr. Rao. And I imagine that it could be the case that we have a medical director that does become chief. I mean, when Chief Rodriguez left, we, in the association, we were thinking about like, oh, what if Dr. Escott could take over? And that's obviously up to the city manager, but we could certainly also have an opinion about that. And so that's, I think, where our hesitation comes from, if that makes sense.
Well, and I guess it along those lines, we believe that they do currently meet the definition of civilian, absent them being negotiated some other way. We believe that they are definitionally civilian. It sounds like you do believe that right now, or as they move in, day one of the contract, that they would be too, but that there could be circumstances where later they may need to be then bargained for. And again, it's sitting there to then be bargained for, but
they're not
It's-
bargained for because we never think they'll be in the.
well, and that's kind of our point of putting it in the civilian portion as opposed to where Houston had it, is we don't want to say we had to bargain for this. We want an agreement that definitionally they're not, they're just civilians to begin with. So, but we're agreeing, you just don't want it in writing, is what I'm hearing. Am I hearing it right?
I'm comfortable with having it in writing. I think we have a suggestion that was sent over.
Okay. That's fair. I
Um,
think we're closer than, I don't want to talk
but I guess
cross purposes because I think we
I know,
agree, but
it's just that I feel like, yes, we can take a 15-minute caucus, we can send over the language and do this again, that's why, but I think we're just so close, like
Yeah.
we completely agree on, I think, the definition. It's just, we agree that the medical directors are not in the bargaining unit, 100%. And so I'm like, rather than us take a 15-minute caucus, give y'all language and then hear what y'all have to say, I would just like to go ahead and get that done and then caucus afterwards. But if y'all feel like you have to see the language from us first, that's fine, it's just,
I think just for a comfort level, I think we do feel that way.
Okay.
So, sorry if that causes a little delay, it will just make us a lot more comfortable to be starting from that particular stage.
Okay, we can do that in 10 minutes.
Why do you say it like that?
I know. Also, I feel like he was born in the nineties, so that's why he's.
97.
97?
Oh.
We're aged poorly.
So I have sent the counter to everybody. All we did is basically just, we agree that they are excluded. We put commas instead of the parentheses.
Okay, so I wanna be clear. You haven't pulled up yet? Ben, do you have it?
I have it. Want to share it?
No, actually, give us some copies for just a second, and I have a strong opinion about this, but I want to make sure that my colleagues agree, so we'll just walk to the hopper, a 1-minute caucus, and look at the language first. And then we will be, she's setting the timer, check her out, take a picture of it. I can take my computer.
Roxy,
I got it.
Roxy can't
It's
because
pretty clear.
It will die.
or longer.
Yes, you're
we on there? We're good with that. We'll accept that. It is. We not believe it means the same thing, but we do understand what it means and we are willing to accept that. So with that, I think we can proceed to our other presentation. And we will prep the PA on that under your most recent language. Oh, I got share.
So per the ground rules, it's not April 15th, so 5 p.m. cutoff.
It's for the ground rules. It's not April 15th.
It's not April 15th, and it says that we should be cutting off at 5 p.m.
Oh, okay, that's when we do more of the.
Follow the rules.
I know.
She's my
I
boss.
thought it said April 15th, we would consider extending it past that time, but that means that we would only meet until that time for those.
And that says we should stay till 5.
Anyway,
I'm gonna try and get through this, make it clear, concise, brief, if I can, but yet getting all the important info. We're here on the limited reopener. This is just gonna be kind of our status update and for the city, gonna show where the city's at and to make sure we're all on the same page and that we have, and I'd be happy to share this with you so that you don't have to type everything out. And this is also for the public, so they know what we're doing. We've already met before on January 31st, 2024. Today's our second session. Oh. I apologize. I'm doing the wrong one. Thank you, Chief. There we go. So we've already met. Our first session was January 31st, 2024. Today's our second session, and we have 4 proposed sessions after this that are currently scheduled. These are the public meetings. Just for the purposes of referring to what we're here about today, we all know it's on the organizational and funding shift of OCMO into the EMS department, so we're just calling it the ONF transition to refer to that. These are the three issues that we identified in our Article 26 on what impact bargaining was going to happen at this limited reopener with the ONF transition. And I'll go through each one individually. Number 1 was the impact of ONF transition on the compensation benefits and working conditions of the existing uniformed staff. That is to say the EMS sworn staff that are subject to the contract and any impacts that they will that will affect them. Critical to this piece, which is what we have just agreed on, was a new definition of uniformed staff once this ONF transition kind of drops. When I say drops, we drop them in. And who the bargaining unit is, who's subject to the contract, who are we bargaining for. And the third issue was the compensation benefits and working conditions of the newly shifted uniformed staff under the new definition moving forward once this amendment, these amendments become in effect. So those are the 3 issues. I wanted to just go over where the city is on number 1, recognizing that this is an incredible, unique opportunity, again, to enhance the services that the city offers to its citizens. On the basis of the ONF transition, there has been a lot of work that's been put into this. And as we've discussed, there's a new organizational structure that's being determined by the chief in order to transition these OCMO positions into the EMS department. Key to that also is the chief determining the functionality of the department operations, including job functions, appointments, assignments, and that has a lot of factors to it. This is from the city's perspective, and we want to make sure that y'all are on the same page, that when in order for this transition to happen, the chief is going to make only these initial appointments. He's gonna have to make these initial appointments and they're gonna have to be regardless of the contract eligibility requirements or the job requirements as the current contract states. The one thing that the chief does understand and has committed to was that all of the initial appointments will meet all of the credentialing requirements. That is imperative. On that, we're also cognizant and thinking of the considerations that the association has to take into account, and the city, quite frankly, takes into account as well. And this is from the city's perspective. We want to make sure that we understand where you are and that we're on the same page. We know that the association wants to ensure that its current membership is not negatively affected, and in this transition, if there's an opportunity, we want to be able to provide enhancements for the current membership. Also, the association has to ensure that the appropriate personnel are represented, and also ensure that the new membership, the new people that are coming in through the awkward transition, are represented appropriately. We wanted to open up the floor to the association to give us a little bit more insight. And you can do so today, and then you can also provide some insight, because I know that you serve an entire membership of other considerations from the association on this limited reopener, so that we're all on the same page. We can identify a common goal, and then we move towards, as you said, a cohesive, unified department, and enhancing these services and making sure that the current membership, as we said, is not negatively affected. And if there's opportunities for enhancement, that we work on trying to take on those opportunities.
And if I can just add one touch to that, which I think is of extreme importance to your membership, is when we talk about, in some cases, opportunities for enhancement, we realize that you want promotional opportunities for your membership, and that's probably number one of all things. We believe that we can work with you on that and be able to enhance current situations and what the opportunities are. And we'll just need to bargain through those, but that we see that as, we could be wrong, but we kind of see that as your number one, or at least hardest thing for us to integrate and be on the same page. But we are on the same page conceptually, but that needs to be an opportunity. Is that the end of the presentation?
That's the end of the presentation.
Yeah, so and you may not be prepared, our kind of last little bullet there is if you have anything like top of your list that we're not even, because those are huge generalities, like here's, that a lot of different things could fit into, obviously. And we're not asking you to slice and dice, but are there big picture items that we're not thinking that the association has on its mind?
So there are a few, and obviously we're not necessarily prepared to
And we will.
but I guess the question first, I also thought that we, y'all might be prepared to get to the nitty gritty of who y'all now believe falls into the uniform staff.
We are.
Okay. So as far as this goes, a few things that come top of mind, are we had wanted to put in PA school, like we have paramedic school, into the contract, and that doesn't necessarily fall into any of these categories. And at the time, we were told we're doing all the PA stuff if the OCMO thing occurs. And so that is a big point of conversation for us, because if y'all remember, the whole PA wanting to bring in PAs originally was to give our folks a career pathway. And so that includes the PAs.
We did recognize that as part of what you would be bringing forward again, and we'll work that with you or not, but we did presume that would be.
And we also wanted to share that we recognize that some of the folks that we want to bring in have advanced degrees that are also not necessarily just PAs, MPs. And so we're thinking about And also, we probably don't need, you know, 2 brand new PAs every single year. And so how can we also incorporate just other types of master degrees that can enhance the department in other ways? Because we know that for some of the OPMO staff, that was a requirement or a preferred trait. The other issue that we wanted to bring up is now that we are all housed under one department, we did want to discuss clinical review because Dr. Escott is going to be working alongside and for however the organizational structure looks that we're not exactly sure of yet, will be operating within the department. And we absolutely recognize that we are not trying to dictate the process. The only thing that we are right now looking at is just making sure that we have representation in key meetings. And that is already agreed to by Dr. Escott in the clinical review, but we did want to codify it in the contract, obviously for future medical directors. But we do think that Dr. Escott has a good process that they, you know, have written out. And so we just want to make sure that we have representation in some of those meetings and also refer to, we have some ideas about a decredentialing matrix, but that's really the wrong term. We're still processing a lot of this information. But just having some guidelines that Dr. Escott has already identified for decredentialing. Because as it is right now, Dr. Escott could say, I don't like the way you looked at me, you're decredentialed. There's really nothing preventing that from happening. We don't think he's going to do that, but we would like some guidelines that he already has in place in the contract, and not even those specific guidelines, just references to those guidelines, so that it's not as arbitrary. So those are 2 of the highest level items that aren't necessarily listed in here. And I did want to, of course, let y'all know because, you know, we'll be presenting language soon. So those things. And I already told y'all about Article 17, but I think we have a little bit more clarity on the direction that we're going with that.
Did you want to respond to that?
Well, hearing all of those, I'm glad that you went through those considerations. I think those are some of the items that we considered and included in that first bullet on the practical considerations for the association. We just kind of did it generally, but we'd already heard, we have heard you and we have listened, and we knew that those items are going to be issues to be discussed as impacts from this transition. So thank you so much for, providing a little bit more clarity. And of course, this is not the end all. If you have other considerations after you visit with your membership that we can discuss them at the next meeting as well. Now, a critical piece to this is I want to make sure that we're all on the same page on how, in order to even be able to bargain these impacts, that we're all on the same understanding that the chief is going to have to make these appointments to get the initial appointments once we, to bring in the OPMO people into EMS to have that integration. Because without those appointments, then there really is nothing, there aren't going to be any more positions if we don't have them, if we don't have anything to bargain. So I just want to make sure that whether you have any questions or if, you know, that you understand or the membership understands it, that's going to happen in order to make this even, number one, to start the impact so that we can bargain for it and to make sure that this transition happens.
We absolutely understand that the appointments need to happen. I think that there's a lot within that saying yes, how the appointments happen, the process by which they happen. Y'all already talked about one of those things, that they will meet the credentialing requirements, but we also think there's a lot of other issues as well, so.
And just for folks, we got some questions, the terminology of appointments, because we have it so specific with the statute as well as in our contract. I want to make sure that we're not fusing that with integration of these positions that will be created under that as opposed to appointing like assistant chiefs and things along those lines. I want to make sure that there is a clarification of the use of appointed positions and compared prior to integrating into new positions that are created that will be positions.
Right, we are talking about the initial one, and I kind of wanted, the reason we're using drop is because we're kidding around, it's like Taylor Swift dropping a song. On one day, everything's gonna start, right, so the drop date, whatever. So the appointments we're talking about here are the people who will become sworn, coming over from Akmo, need to be dropped somewhere. And so what we're saying here is we wanna make sure we're on the same page, that you understand, they don't have time and grade in the EMS department. That there are minor things that may not, in the job description is, they would meet the statutory requirements and they would meet the medical type certification credential. But they may not have time and grade or other minor things in the job description, and we're happy to kind of, go through a couple offline with you as well to give you specifics, but that we're not like going through an application appointment for these people and not going to come over. The chief's making his decision, he's dropping them in, and that there are a couple of these things that obviously they can't being the most obvious. So yes, we're not talking about, those will be negotiated, obviously, how everything else goes, but what we're talking about here is day one, the problem.
Just those awkward positions.
I was wondering if Swifty was gonna get a reference.
Why not? The other thing I wanted to talk about was when you talk about the, we've used many terms over the years, the clinical review process, credentialing, however we want to do it. We believe that will not be a problem, and that we can continue either under a new letter or or the old letter, in the way that it has been structured, that the chief medical officer will not be reporting under this contract to the chief for basically standards of care, any policies related to requirements to attain or maintain licensing certifications or credentialing by the chief medical officer, the scope of medical oversight and quality, and the performance improvement processes or other authority reserved for the medical director under the Texas Health and Safety Code. He will continue to report to the ACM for public safety for that, and up through to the city manager. So we believe that how we've I'm sure you've heard, this comes up every bargaining cycle, and basically, when it comes down to it, what's happened is they do a letter either with ACMO or the ACM over ACMO in order to make sure that the needs are met that you feel that you need for representation, et cetera. So we believe that the way it's structured, we'll keep that out of it. Obviously, you'll have to take a look and be comfortable with that, but that's where we will be coming in from, that won't be bargainable because of the way that we structure. Hopefully avoided that whole.
And just to clarify, so you will be so are you saying that there's not gonna be any new language, or that your preference that there's not any new language in the contract, or that add language that emphasizes
That there would be no new language in the contract because it would be unnecessary, because he will not be reporting through that chain of command at all for those services.
yes, and I understand what you're saying. We'll still take an opportunity to present, just so we can show you what we're looking at, because I think that it is less onerous than y'all might think, and might not exactly qualify with what you're discussing. You'll just have to look at the language.
We absolutely will let you present anything that you choose to present. We will not necessarily agree that it's bargainable unless and until we absolutely. So
And what I
Just
expect,
with
what
that
I heard
caveat.
to expect is not so much nothing to do with the actual process, but a representation issue.
okay.
Somewhat of the process. Representation.
Yeah, I don't mean to.
We do believe that it directly impacts working conditions, and since the city has decided to bring them under the umbrella of EMS, and there's people that are gonna be part of our bargaining unit, we're already making references to them on our contract. I think that we've already crossed that line. We believe that we've gotten there, but it does directly impact working conditions. They may not report through the chain of command. We still do believe that that there is a place for it in the contract.
And we'll let you present that whole
Sure.
theory, and we will listen it out. Our starting point is it doesn't, your starting point is it does, but we will hear that without admitting that it's
Sure, understood.
perfect. We presume that would be the case. Other than that, are there any major, missing any major? That you,
I think, also, you know, ensuring, when y'all say ensuring that new membership is represented appropriately, are y'all talking about in this bargaining or in the contract? Because I guess my point is just that we do feel responsibility for the folks that we believe are gonna come to the sworn unit, even though they're not in the sworn unit right now. And so preserving or enhancing even their pay benefits. Because we obviously know that you talk about red circling and everything, we wouldn't want them to lose money right through this. And so, and there might be times where we do believe that they could receive some enhancements, right, if they qualify for a stipend or something. So I just wanna make that clear.
I would say we generally agree that we do intend to negotiate the compensation and benefits of the employees who will be coming in, because as of day one, they'll be in. There may be a time when there's something that you bring up where we're like, wait a minute, you don't even represent them yet. But generally, yeah, we're on the same page.
I think now with the TA on uniform staff, that helps us establish that and make sure that we're all dealing with the, you know, on the same page about who's part of the bargaining unit we're negotiating.
But yeah, vacations, all of those things, what they will accrue, we do intend to work with. Well, if we're good there, do you want us to click I believe that the articles we have are, oh, I'm sorry. It's gonna be more important for you to see the list, isn't it? Yes. Let's do that, and then we'll see if you want us to get to the others.
I'm gonna go over this.
Me too, yeah, sure. Okay, so, total current ACMO positions, there are 19. What we envision to remain civilian are 9 of the positions, that's 8 job titles.
Chelsea, do I need to get it bigger?
Okay, I'll go through them with you in just a second, like individually. And then moving to sworn, we see 10 positions, which is under 7 job titles. So we'll just tell you what that list is. First off, Chief Medical Officer, the Chief Deputy Medical Director, the Deputy Medical Directors, the Infection Control Manager, which is currently vacant, the Research Coordinator, the Data Analyst, the Executive Assistant, and the Administrative Senior, we believe, belong under the civilian. All of the others, as you see, and these aren't necessarily the names moving forward, these would be kind of how I currently utilize names. Chief Paramedic Practitioner, Paramedic Practitioners, the Manager Credentialing and Performance Improvement, Credentialing Coordinator, Coordinator Interdisciplinary Quality, Coordinator Clinical Curriculum and Simulation, Clinical Service Line Coordinators, we intend all to be sworn. Hopefully that's everybody, we haven't missed anything, so we envision the as far as position wise. And we're trying very hard to stay away from names, that's, you know, not the point, I know you are too, so that's appreciated. Do you have any questions on these, or obviously you need to digest and so you can see how close to the same page we're on. We
email this as well.
Yeah, we will email this as well.
My question is just, do these job or these titles, do they correlate with the existing job titles, or have y'all changed?
Yeah, so what these are the job titles from the currently posted organizational structure. So some of them have been morphed a little bit, like currently Chief Paramedic Practitioner, that's what they're currently entailed in the temporary job structure, but that's not what they were under ACMO. So we tried to use the current one that's posted. Okay, so if that's helpful. It is not the names necessarily. Some of them are, some of them aren't. The future names.
So we're looking at a total of just 19 FTEs.
19 is how many there are currently. They're not all currently filled. Is that correct? I presume you'll need to sync that in. So do you want us to go ahead and give you the other, the articles we discussed about, the 1, 5, 8, and 23? Yes. The ones you requested the other day that we go through the kind of simple ones, if you will. We can wait if we've had a lot today and you just.
Would you all be comfortable just emailing them over?
I was
We
gonna
can do that
suggest
and then discuss that the first thing next. Yeah, let's do that.
But what is it, just for the record, it was one,
We'll make our wildest assumptions.
1, 5, 8, and 23 is what I have.
Yes, the other thing we could do is, and I beg your pardon, when I said that I would prep the uniform staff definition for TA, if you recall, there was one other definition in Article 2, we could also present that, we have that already.
Oh, okay.
And it's a simple one, it was definition of agreement, just including the amendment portion, so I mean, it's super simple. So we could also add 2 to the list that we will send you. Okay. 1, 2, 5, 8, 23. Yeah, same page. Okay, yeah, we'll send those over to you. And then we can. I think we had a productive day. I think the things we did today are foundation to the rest of the conversation. So I think it was very important that we took the time to do them right and that we were on the same page. I do not want to get 2/3 of the way through this negotiation and you say, what are you talking about? We never knew that the chief intended it, you know, that sort of thing. So if you have any big red flags on our drop concepts, be thinking those through because we need to know those ASAP.
Thank you very much.
All right, good day. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, appreciate it.
I resisted